So now we have come upon my third favorite genre of anime. A genre only seems to exist within the realm of anime, and that is Eechi series, where the pervert reigns supreme and the good ones are hard to find through the mess of mediocre series. And while this genre is extremely subjective because it's based on one's own fan service ideals, how one tolerates fan service in general, stuff like that, it was really slim pickings 2018 for a good ecchi series. And I finally managed to find 5 that are somewhat ecchi for the sake of the list, but all of them kind of fail in their own little regards. So this is the best of the least, like finding a diamond in a turd mine. It's showing how generally not great this year was for fan service anime when this makes the list, even though it's honestly one of the most disappointing anime I've seen in some time. Also, the manga is quite disappointing too for similar reasons. Yuna's Haunted Hot Spring is a story of a young boy who ends up living at a haunted hot spring, obviously, and ends up rooming up with the cute ghost girl. This boy, however, isn't your average standard harem protagonist. He's actually a hard worker, holding down multiple part-time jobs to try to get rid of his massive amounts of debt, and he's also a talented ghost fighter and exorcist, because he's dealt with supernatural threats for quite some time, and is trained as an exorcist for quite some time. Hell, he can one-shot the dragon god, so he's actually quite strong. And, well, he's pretty bland despite that. Our MC is pretty much a Sladen character, pretty bland, and he pretty much exists to solve every problem for the heroines because of just how strong he is. The heroines themselves are pretty good. I mean, we have our resident ghost girl, the other residents of the inn, which include a sexy ninja, a manga making oni, a lackadaisical cat girl, a young tanuki girl, various other schoolmates and whatnot, and some other stuff that gets added on later in the manga and anime. But all of them just fall into the same in love with the main character because of this thing, and it's honestly pretty dull as an end result of it. And it's really disappointing. This whole series is like, the fan service itself is pretty decent. It's the standard thing, you know, groping, panty shots, accidental mishaps here and there. They used the magic thing to add in some magical mishaps here and there, such as magic water, magic perverted toys, stuff like that. And no, it's not the kind of perverted toys you think about. It's literally stuffed animals coming to life and being perverted. Stuff like that. But there's not really any real agency to much of the conflicts in the story because the main character can pretty much just punch everything to death. And no, it's not supposed to be as entertaining as how One Punch Man can punch everything to death in one hit. He's like really barely above the standard harem protagonist who's just there to be there, and in fact he does have character, but overall his character isn't really fully explored so much as he's just, some guy. And honestly, that would be fine if the girls were all that entertaining in their own right, but they often just fall into their various anime tropes and just become pretty bland as a result. Ultimately, the series is okay. It does have the fan service quota. It is entertaining in its spots, but ultimately, if you're looking for a good fan service show, only watch this for the ecchi and not really the story or characters, which is disappointing to say the least. Honestly, the only reason it's on this list is because I needed a 5th slot, and yeah, that's why it's here. I've talked about the series for almost 4 minutes now, dear God. Let's move on to the next one. So, this one's a slightly better one, but not really great. Miss Caretaker of Sunohara is, well, a really odd fan service anime. You see, because it's about a young boy being taken care of by an older woman, which seems to be a really weird meta-genre that just randomly popped up out of nowhere almost. Like, it's been a thing in anime for a long time, but I've never seen so many series just focused on this one subject of a really young boy being taken care of by a woman who's probably old enough to be his mother and being into her. Well, in any case, our young boy, who looks kind of like a girl, honestly, moves into a mostly female dorm with a rather buxom and beautiful caretaker. And, well, that's pretty much all there is. It's a basic series with a basic premise, and it's really only fan servicey in the fact that because he's so young, most of the girls don't really notice him, except for the one who seems to have a crush on him. It's weird, but it does rely on the fact that the fan service I mean that the caretaker is very buxom and caring and all that stuff. It's a weird series. It's honestly worth the watch if you can stand the weirdness. But again, it's not the best thing in the world. Like a lot of stuff on this list is not the best thing in the world. Alright, so with this one, I'm really stretching it. Because, well, this isn't really traditional fan service. But it does have two things that can be considered fan service. Food porn and man service. Okay, but seriously now, Golden Kamuy normally wouldn't be on this part of the list if not for just how bad fan service anime was in 2018. So about this series. Golden Kamuy is about a former Japanese soldier after the Russo-Japanese War, look it up, going to Hokkaido and learning of a mysterious hidden treasure with a map that's literally tattooed onto the hides of escaped dangerous prisoners. So of course he goes out hunting for this gold, wanting to get the treasure, hunting down the prisoners with the assistance of a young Ainu girl who joins up with them because she wants to get revenge for her father, who was killed by one of the prisoners who tattooed the map onto the other prisoners. Okay, I explained all that, but it doesn't make as much sense unless you watch the show. Anyway, so this is generally a really suspenseful, action-heavy series that's oddly funny. Like, the comedic bits in Hellsing oddly funny. So why is it on the fan service list? Well, there's a good amount of the time where the main male characters will be honestly out and out naked at times, walking around butt ass naked, their clothes burned off, clothes got stolen, and stuff like that. Well, some of the stuff that would normally happen to a woman in anime, but happens to these guys instead. And at least in some funny moments, then the series almost becomes a cooking anime at points, considering how much attention and focus is put on the preparation, hunting, and making of food. It's kind of weird all this combines into one series, but it generally works surprisingly well. This is a really good series, and honestly, because of, despite how good the action is, it's not really the main focus most of the time, so it's kind of weird for me to put in the action list, and the comedy's not always the focus, so I can't put it in the comedy list, so I have to put on some list, and I needed a spot, so it wound up here, because it technically qualifies somewhat as a fan service anime. So, yeah. Technicalities. Let's move on to the next one. Finally, an actual competent fan service series, thank God. But honestly, this shouldn't really be here on this part of the list. It honestly belongs in a continuing series, but because this is a studio change and art style change and a major thing, it feels like a little bit of a soft reboot at points. It honestly feels more fitting here than on a continuing series because of all the differences between this and the first set of series of High School DxD. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with this series, it's about Issei, a young man who dies on his first date and gets revived as a demon. And from there, he trains and works hard to rise up the demon ranks out of lust and love for the various girls around him in his dream of becoming a Harem King. Honestly, that's all I really need to know because, while it does have a lot of allusions to classical mythology and urban fiction, all that kind of stuff, it honestly feels like an urban fantasy novel at points. None of that's really important compared to Issei's character growth and his great perversion because it's honestly the best part of the show, as well as the really well done action scenes. Honestly, this is just a fun little series, and this season has its issues. The animation isn't quite up to par with the other series. The new character designs aren't as good, and honestly they need to really whip the animation staff in the check for the next season because there are some errors here and there, but not major errors. And while a lot of people, including myself at points, have issues with the new art style, I don't fully mind it. It's pretty good, it's competent. I like the old style a bit better because the line work was a lot better there. But I do think this art style and this animation does have potential, at least in terms of the fight scenes, and it just hasn't been reached yet. And honestly, I'm looking to see if they get a next season to see if they'll reach that true potential that High School DxD, at least this iteration of the anime franchise, potentially has, as we get a potential season. What are we on, 5 or 6 at this point? Dear God, this franchise goes on forever. Yeah, but honestly, this would have made my favorite fan service anime of the year if it wasn't for the art style change. But because the art style changed, one other series managed to top it. So that series, well. And finally, we come across the best fan service anime of 2018. And it's not exactly the best example of a fan service anime. First off, it's a standard isekai story where the main protagonist is an overpowered badass who ends up in an alternate world, and in this case he's summoned by two girls, a busty elf girl and a flat-chested cat girl, who end up trying to make him their slave, but rebalance the spell onto both of them, making them his slave. Yeah, it makes sense in context. Yeah, the story's pretty standard from there. Both the characters have their own reasons for why they want a superpowered slave guy running around, and he tries his best to try to free them of the magic spell that's put them under his control. And generally just him running around the world being an overpowered badass while basically trying to help these two girls that are attached to him. And yeah, they end up doing the standard thing where they fall in love with him because he's just a nice guy and stuff like that. And it's pretty standard. The plot actually does have a few tension-filled moments later in the plot when he actually encounters an actual challenge, which honestly surprised me considering the fact this is standard isekai and normally the main character just steamrolls through everything, but not in this case, honestly. The characters are generally entertaining, and the fan service is generally on point, and a lot of generalizations. The ecchi is indeed quite ecchi in this series, which is godsend considering the ecchi series that we had in 2018. So, there's not really much to explain. The plot's simple, some of the characters are really pretty well done, and if you're curious, I do recommend you take a look at this series. It's honestly, despite how standard it is, it's still pretty fun. So, it's the best ecchi series of 2018. Kinda sad to say that. Normally it'd be like a third tier series, but I guess in 2018 it becomes number one. So yeah, that concludes the best ecchi series of 2018, and it was a bit of a disappointing year for fan service, but it's still disappointing. But honestly, it was an honestly good year for one type of anime. Well, multiple types of anime, but in particular, comedy, which I already talked about, and action anime. See you all next time.